Tonight on The ReidOut.
Based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel.
Attorney General Merrick Garland appoints a special counsel to lead the Trump investigations. Does this move us closer to an indictment, or is it just window dressing for when they let him off the hook? Plus, Elon Musk crashes Twitter like a driverless Tesla with a broken AI brain. The site has been trashed at times, but I will tell you why it deserved a better fate than this. And a tale of two caucuses, House Democrats seamlessly transition into a bright new future, while Kevin is held hostage by the screaming zombies. Brains! We begin tonight with this moment in history.
Good evening. A former federal judge today was named independent counsel, the special prosecutor in the Iran case. He is 74-year-old Lawrence Walsh, a former president of the American Bar Association. And as NBC's law correspondent Carla Stern reports tonight, his investigation is expected to range over a wide area.
Lawrence Walsh spent 6 years investigating the Iran-Contra scandal and President Ronald Reagan's involvement in the scheme to sell arms to Iran to raise money for an illegal guerrilla war in Nicaragua. Ultimately, 6 people were indicted or convicted, including Reagan's defense secretary, the assistant secretary of state, the national security advisor, and 3 CIA officials. Reagan was forced to give a national address on August 12, 1987, and take responsibility for this embarrassing period in his presidency. But in the end, all 6 of the indicted men were pardoned by Reagan's successor, George H.W. Bush, at the recommendation of Bush's Attorney General, William Barr. Yeah, that William Barr. That was the next independent counsel investigation following the one more than a decade earlier, the Watergate investigation of Richard Nixon, which also resulted in indictments and convictions, and for which Nixon ultimately resigned. Both of those investigations, Watergate and Iran-Contra, were denounced at the time by Republicans as partisan witch hunts. In the case of Watergate, by none other than Gerald Ford, who succeeded Nixon and ultimately pardoned him. Fast forward to the 1990s, and America experienced the appointment of an independent counsel to investigate President Bill Clinton and a failed land deal called Whitewater, which morphed into an investigation of Clinton's sex life. In other words, an investigation with all the earmarks of an actual partisan witch hunt. It was so obviously political, the independent counsel statute was changed, giving us the special counsel statute we have today. Most recently used in the appointment of Robert Mueller to investigate possible Russia collusion by the Trump campaign in the 2016 election. Mueller's probe resulted in 34 indictments and preceded Trump's first of 2 impeachments. But far from slowing him down, the lack of accountability for Trump himself appeared to only embolden him. He simply screamed, "Partisan witch hunt," and about a third of the country bought it. Another third was disappointed in Mueller, and another third just didn't know what to think. Well, now Attorney General Merrick Garland has decided that the Mueller process is the way to go in the multiple cases involving Donald Trump, cases that his own Justice Department has been pursuing for a long, long time. Now, I should note that whatever special counsel recommends, it will still be up to the Attorney General to make the final decision. So it will still be for Merrick Garland to decide whether to bring any potential charges against Trump for his assorted crimes. But with Garland indicating that this decision was made as a result of Trump's announced candidacy this week, 2 years before the presidential election, it turns out that Trump's little stunt worked. As Jose Pagliari, political investigations reporter at Daily Beast, explains.
There is no way to look at this announcement, if you can even call it an announcement, as anything other than an attempt to mar any prosecution as a political persecution of him. Trump announcing is going to run could absolutely be viewed as him trying to seek further cover, so that if he does get indicted for one of the many things that he's being investigated for right now, he could just say, "Oh, look at this. They just indicted me because I announced. They're just trying to stop me from winning for you in 2024.
Joining me now is Neil Katyal, former acting Solicitor General, now a law professor at Georgetown University and an MSNBC legal analyst, and Jill Wine-Banks, former assistant Watergate special prosecutor and an MSNBC legal analyst. And Jill, I'm going to start with you because, you know, it is hard to describe how apoplectic so many people are over this decision, because it's essentially saying that if you run for president, you can essentially escape direct prosecution and fall into this process that, at least other than Nixon resigning, I mean, he resigned, lots of people went to jail, it has not resulted in direct legal consequences for any of the two presidents for which it seemed warranted. And in the case of Bill Clinton, well, that was a political prosecution. But the special the statute doesn't seem to result in accountability for the president. What do you make of the decision to do it this way?
Well, first of all, I think your opening said everything that needs to be said. My first response was a tweet that started "expletives deleted," because that's how I was really feeling. But I have calmed down a little bit. I no longer think that it will be a waste of time in the sense of delaying things, because then I realized when Archie Cox got fired and a new special prosecutor was brought in, we, the people who actually knew the facts, were kept on. If the new special counsel keeps the current staff, and they seem ready for trial, they have brought in really experienced trial lawyers, it won't delay a possible indictment. So that made me feel a little bit better. Yeah. That does not, I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it was necessary. I understand the argument about special circumstances and the appearance of a conflict. There is no conflict right now. That's first of all. And I think it demeans the Department of Justice that I love and adore and really was proud to be part of. People at the Department of Justice operate on law and facts, not politics. And they could do this job. There does not seem to be a real need for a special counsel. That said, Jack Smith seems to have the right skill set. He's been involved in prosecuting a former president. It would happen to be of Kosovo, but it's still a former president. And I think he has some really good skills.
Neil, let me bring you in, because you actually rewrote the law on the special counsel law that used to, sort of prevail before the Clinton debacle. So I am very curious to find out if you believe that this special counsel statute, as it exists now, is the right vehicle to use to deal with all of these potential crimes.
So, Joy, I actually drafted the special counsel regulations that are being used now, not the pre-Clinton ones. So I'm a fan of them in general, but I'm not a fan of them here. So I think Jack Smith seems like a great person. He's got a public integrity background. He's the kind of prosecutor you want. I have no doubt that Donald Trump is going to start calling Jack Smith things like Jack the Hack and silly things like that. But this is a man who's investigated war criminals. I don't think he's being afraid of being called a few names by Donald Trump. But the decision to use the special counsel here, to me, the regulations doesn't make sense. I think it's inappropriate, and I think it risks delaying the investigation, because the regulations as we drafted them were really about the fear of a cover-up, that an attorney general couldn't investigate a president for wrongdoing who had nominated him. And so that was like the paradigmatic case. It was not something like this, in which we've already had the investigation, particularly into Mar-a-Lago. The facts are out there. We all know that given those facts, if it were you, Joy, or Jill, or me doing any of those things and stealing all those documents, we'd be in jail. We wouldn't have a special master. We certainly wouldn't have a special counsel. We'd be in jail now. But Donald Trump gets something different. Why? Because Merrick Garland says, well, he's announced he's running for office and Biden has announced an intent to run as well. That, to me, is tantamount to rewarding Donald Trump for his maneuvers to try and avoid accountability. I think that, Jack Smith is up to it, and I'm sure that he's going to indict because the evidence on Mar-a-Lago is so strong. It's an open and shut case. But precisely because it's an open and shut case, I don't think that a special counsel was needed. And Merrick Garland says, well, there's a conflict of interest because of Biden running in 2024. If that's true, that means there's a special counsel needed for all kinds of stuff, including the Hunter Biden investigation. That just, to me, doesn't make sense. And it doesn't remove the criticism of Garland, which is, that he's acting politically, because under the regulations, at the end of the day, if Jack Smith says, I want to indict Donald Trump, who's got to sign off on it? A guy named Merrick Garland. So he's going to get all the same accusations, because we know Trump and his base will always attack anyone who goes against Donald Trump's wishes. It doesn't matter if it's Merrick Garland. It doesn't matter if it's Jack Smith. It doesn't matter if it's Trump's own vice president, as we sadly learned 2 years ago.